Do you wait too long to deal with issues in your relationships?
On today's show, we will be talking about what you can do to avoid problems when an issue comes up in your relationship. Join us on Awaken Your Spirit.
Welcome, everybody, to Awaken Your Spirit. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia. And our show is about inspiration, motivation, and developing the mindset to live a happy and abundant life.
We are live here every Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time. If you guys would like to join us, either live here on Facebook or YouTube, Facebook, go to @Aaron and Veronica. Make sure you like and follow us there and get the live notifications. If you're watching from YouTube, subscribe to the channel and get the live notification button so you never miss an episode when we go live. So today we have an exciting show. We're going to be talking about dealing with issues in your relationships. But before we get into that, we're going to start off with our first segment of our show, which is our Inspirational Moment with Veronica.
So Inspirational Moments is when I like to read something inspirational. And today I'm going to read something from this book. It's called The Divine Romance. And it kind of goes hand in hand with today's topic, dealing with relationships. And here's the cover. It's by Paramahansa Yogananda. All right. And the title of the paragraph says, "A God of love, wisdom, and beauty. Now is the time for you to make the effort to know God. In meditation, again and again, throw the bombs of your deep yearning against the bulwark of silence until its walls are broken down and God is revealed. Feel the love of God. Then in every person, you will see the face of the Father, the light of love which is in all. You will find a magic living relationship uniting the trees, the sky, the stars, all people, and all living things, and you will feel a oneness with them."
You can feel the energy, can't you? You forgot to bring your tissues.
I did. This is the code of divine love. I was going to read more, but oh, wait.
And so usually when I see Veronica, when she feels like this, like you can feel that energy, like that's truth. And I think we all need to come from that place of just love and caring for all. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now in this world and society. And I think it's very important that we all learn that we come together, that we understand who we truly are. And when we can show compassion and love to everybody, well, how much different of a world would that be?
Let me get a tissue real quick.
All right, go get a tissue. I'll talk to the audience here. I hope you guys enjoy the Inspirational Moment with Veronica. This is what happens when we go live, you guys. And so it's very fascinating. And so this book right here, this is from the works of Paramahansa Yogananda. So this is a series of collective talks that he did during his time here. And the messages that he shared, a lot of it came from truth. He's very in tune, very, just very knowledgeable about just life in general and how to live peacefully. How can we all come up with a place of just removing all the mental sorrow that people go through? A lot of depression, a lot of frustrations in our life. There's challenges in relationships, there's challenges in business, and all of that gets projected in some way. And what this show here is about is really to teach you how to master and deal with your emotions when issues come up. What do we do in that situation, and what's the best way to go about that so you can come back to that place of peace, serenity, and really create happiness.
Now I'm going to read the second part.
All right, part 2.
that I was going to read too. So it says, "The Heavenly Father can be known as cosmic love, cosmic light, cosmic bliss. He is also infinite beauty. When we look at a rose, we shouldn't analyze it too much, but rather concentrate on its beauty. If our thoughts are engrossed in the chemical and botanical characteristics of the rose, we lose sight of its loveliness. Rather, we should bathe our spirits in the deep, pure feeling that steers within us when we gaze on the glories of his creation. This is the way to know God as beauty. And God is poesy. It is another expression of his beauty. He is the infinite poem and the joy we feel when we hear inspiring poems. Poetry itself is a thing of beauty and a joy forever. If we love God, we love poetry. To establish God's kingdom on earth, we must follow the path of wisdom, beauty, and love. We must cultivate wisdom and learn through our wisdom to love the beauty of God in all souls and in all things.
You got through it.
It's interesting because I read that prior to the show and I was fine, but then as I was reading to everyone, I just felt like a flood of like emotion, but it's more like happy tears. Like it's like with everything going on, I feel like this is what needs to be heard.
Yeah. And for those that are new to the show, or you're new to us, one of the things is Veronica is very empathic. She feels energy. She feels people around us, around the world. She can concentrate on somebody and understand what's going on within them, the pains that they might be holding on to. Sometimes you can even feel the joy. And it's interesting because a lot of times she can even feel stuff that I'm going through when I'm trying to kind of bottle it up or just go through my own process. Like, I can't hide that from her. She'll always know. So when she goes through these writings, these readings, it's very fascinating to see like the emotion that shows up, because it's like you tune into that energy of love, and what's like where everybody really needs to be.
Yeah, as I was reading it out loud, I just felt like that energy come out. It's nice.
I hope you guys enjoyed the inspirational moment with Veronica today. If you guys really like that, give us some hearts, give us some likes. And if you know that there's anybody that can benefit from this message today, please share this with them, invite them into the show, because as we always say, we never know who this message is going to impact. And if it just helps one person, that really is why we do this show.
Yeah.
And so share the show for them, and make sure to join us. Make sure you subscribe to the show as well. All right. Today, we're going to be talking about addressing problems early, and addressing problems and issues early in your relationships. So a lot of these topics, things we talk about is things we help out with clients and people that we teach and we guide through in their processes of life, but also it's things that we go through and how we deal with these situations when they show up. And what we've learned in our 8 years of relationship, we're going in our second year of marriage, but we've been together for 8 years, is we've found that by dealing with our emotions, by being open and discussing when issues show up within our relationship or anything, that it's important that we deal with those early on and not wait until it becomes a problem.
Yeah, because it's like when you think about, like, say an issue comes up and you don't talk about it and you're just bottling it up, and then you're maybe thinking about it, and it's almost like the issue becomes bigger and bigger, and it just eats you up on the inside. Like it creates an uncomfortable feeling, and that feeling or whatever you're vibrating out can be felt by other people. So even though you might not say anything, other people can feel like an uncomfortable and an uneasiness. So that's why it's important to address these issues as they come up versus holding on to them, because one, it doesn't make you feel good. So what happens? It's your vibration lowers and your mood changes and you're not in the best of moods. And people can notice that, like they can tell, that there's something wrong. And then two, it doesn't make the other person feel better if it's in a relationship and the other person maybe starts to get in their head like, oh, like, I don't know what's going on, but there's an issue and so then they might start creating stories in their mind. So that's why it's important to address it as soon as it comes up, because then a small issue can become a big problem.
Yeah. And I know this from just past experiences, and we've discussed this, is, in maybe past relationships or past issues, I would always bottle everything up. And everybody has their own reason for that. And we share a lot is we're not taught how to really deal with our emotions when they show up. Something's frustrating us, something's, creating some type of a, either it's anger, whether it's sadness, or we feel hurt. And it can be very uncomfortable dealing with situations. And most people will try to avoid that situation as much as possible, maybe because they don't like going through conflict. And so they try to avoid that. So either for myself, I used to bottle everything up. But here's what happens. That doesn't work very well. Because when you bottle something up, you suppress it, it's like a pressure cooker. And eventually what's going to happen is your attitude, your behavior is going to change. And you can start to project on other people. For me, I would always used to withdraw. And what would happen is there might be maybe a small issue going on, but then I would internalize it. And then when you internalize something without really addressing or getting all the facts and information, as you mentioned earlier, we start to make things up in our mind, and we make it even worse than it really is. And what happens is you go through this process without dealing with it, and eventually a small issue that could have been resolved now becomes a problem, and that could end in a relationship ending. And they go, oh, I never saw that coming, or what happened? Well, because you never dealt with the issue ahead of time, and it was almost to the point where it's too late to deal with it.
Yeah, and I used to do the same thing, and past relationships, just bottle it up, not say anything, and then maybe one little thing that bothered me, now that seemed to be the problem, because it was like that was like the last straw or whatever, and then it just escalated into something that it's like, well, that wasn't a big deal, but then it's like it became a big deal because of all the other stuff that was piling up. So that's why it's important to address the things as they show up, so it's not bottled up. It doesn't, because we know it doesn't make us feel good. So it's like, let's just address it now before it becomes a big problem. And it'll make you feel better, because once you address it, it's like, oh, like I'm not holding on to that anymore. It's out in the open. We're talking about it, and it doesn't become like something big.
Yeah, and this is something that we've seen in other relationships that maybe didn't do so well. And one of the challenges that we saw was there was a lack of communication in that relationship, and there was definitely problems going on, and each person didn't want to share and talk about it. And if they did talk about it, it was more like, oh, something wrong with me. Then it just became like this escalation. And so there was an avoidance factor. And each one would talk about that person to other people, but never talk to the person themselves. So that's one thing that you want to avoid doing as much as you can, is not talking with the person that you're having the issue with, and sharing that with all the other people, but never addressing with them, because that's what we talking about behind someone's back. And that never solves anything. And what can happen is when there's a lack of communication, and we start to make things up, and all the emotion just builds up even more. And we never deal with our emotion, then that's when we get to hurt, then there's frustration, then there's anger that's involved. And eventually that's what can destroy relationships.
Yeah, because then like you mentioned, if you're talking about the person you have an issue with somebody else, and you're telling someone else what the issue is versus the person, then now and if the person finds out, then it could feel like maybe a sense of like not trusting that person, like, or feeling like they don't trust you enough to talk to you, because that's what how you build trust is you talk directly to the person and communicate what's going on, because it's almost like this whole communication thing. It's like people are afraid to communicate when there's an issue, because then it's like, oh no, like I don't know what's going to happen, and it creates that tension, and then so we're holding on to that. And but when you address it, it's like, oh, like it wasn't as bad as I thought. So it's like address those issues right away.
And it's like, and why do we hold on to that? Like, why do we need to let it draw out for any long period of time? And sometimes we do have to have difficult conversations in a relationship that, again, they may not be that pleasant, but the conversation has to happen. Just like in a business where, things aren't doing so well in the business, and the employer has to have that conversation with his employees. Maybe, things aren't working well. We have to let you go. And sometimes that's not an easy conversation to have. And so what we have to do is we have to be open in our relationships. And that's what's really made our relationship strong. Is we've learned over the years that the more we talk and address the issues, and we go through this all the time, and it's not really like anything major, but we dealt with this just recently. And it's like, I was something was coming with inside me, but what it was, all it was, the issue was it was triggering up or bringing up old issues that I had not really processed or dealt with yet. And the way our subconscious mind works, it associates and associates something like with a past experience, and your whole physiology will shift and change as if you're reliving that past experience, because it doesn't understand time or space. It knows just what is. And so I realized, okay, I'm feeling something. And for me, I go quiet because I don't like to express, because I know if I project on other people, that makes things worse. And where some people actually do that, they project on what they're feeling on other people, and it can create all kinds of issues. And so I've learned, when I feel comfortable, we'll talk. And when we talk, it's like all of that just melts away.
Yeah, and it's important to talk when you're not emotional, like when you're not in like a highly emotional state, because then that can escalate the issue to become a big problem. Because when you're highly emotional, you're not really thinking as well, and you're just emotional. And so when you're talking in that state, it's like you might say things that you didn't mean, or you might just the conversation won't go as smooth because you might start to yell or things like that. So it's important to calm yourself first if you're feeling angry or whatever it is, and then have the conversation, or tell the person, is it okay if we talk on this day? Because I really want to address this. And then, more than likely they'll say yes. But and then sometimes it might not be the right place to talk. Like, say there's a group of people, and then like say something happens and there's an issue that's bothering you, but maybe sometimes it's better to wait until you're alone, and then address the issue and have a regular conversation versus something that that can escalate by being emotional.
Yeah, because when you're in that highly emotional state, you don't think very well, you don't rationalize. And it's imagine like the little child having a tantrum. That's how your subconscious mind is. It'll have a tantrum, and sometimes things can get said that you would never normally say when you're in a rational thinking mind. And we've had those moments where you said something, and then later on you regret what you said, and now you're dealing with the ramifications of that action. And so we have to learn how to really just process our emotions and deal with them. And what do we do? So when you're in that highly emotional state, there's an issue that's going on, and you don't know how to address it. So what could we do? Well, first is let's calm ourselves to the best that we can. And one of the first things that we can do is really just we start to breathe and do as much as you can. And it may not, sometimes it can help you relax in a very short period of time. And it can take a little extra time. Sometimes you might need a day. Sometimes you might need 2 days. But you feel like the fire is still there and you're in that highly emotional state, you just can't calm down. Give yourself as much time as you need, but work on things to help your mind to relax so you can think straight. And for some people, that might be weak. If you can't have that conversation with somebody right now, give it some time. Go ahead and wait just a little bit until you feel relaxed. But don't wait a month, 2 years. Is you want to do it as fast as possible, maybe by the end of the week. And one of the interesting exercise that I learned from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, he says you're in conflict with somebody and you just feel like you can't have that conversation with them, or the emotion's too high. One of the things you can do is give yourself by the end of the week. If you can't come down by the end of the week, then write a letter. If you feel like it's hard for you to express and talk, then you can write a letter or something, and to express what you're feeling. Hey, I would like to talk at this time. It's like set an appointment with yourself or set an appointment with that person. Why don't let's all come down, let's talk at this time. And our intention is we'll have a rational and logical conversation about this and figure out solutions. But it's hard to do that when you're really emotional. So you want to get the emotion to calm down as best you can.
Yeah, and this can also be like relationships at work. So if you're an employer or an employee and you need to talk to your boss, or the boss needs to talk to you, it's like even set that time. So you have a regular conversation where it doesn't escalate, or it doesn't start off out of anger or whatever it is. But the important thing is like we mentioned earlier, is to allow our emotions to calm and to neutralize before having that conversation. And like, where do these behaviors come from? Like why, like we talked about earlier, like why do we feel we have to address certain issues in that way? And a lot of times it's how we grew up. Like how do we observe our parents having issues and conversations when issues would arise? And for me, it was silence. Like my parents wouldn't talk for months. Sometimes it could have been like 5-6 months, and like that was way too long. And it's something, like maybe they even forgot what the issue was after 6 months or 5 months. And like why put yourself through that suffering? And when you can address the issue ahead of time, and then it's that weight being lifted. But I think a lot of it is the fear of what the other person is going to do, or how they're going to respond. And I think that's a big one. It's like, oh, I don't know what they're going to think about this, but
or they're going to get angry, they're going to yell, angry, or what if the relationship splits and it's like all the different fears come up. But it's everybody's own internal process. And what we've come to understand too is, again, we tend to make up a lot of things in our mind, and when we have those conversations, we find out that half the stuff we were thinking about wasn't really the issue in the first place. I might be thinking, oh, she's thinking this and she's doing all that, but really I'm just making that up in my mind, or she's doing the same thing to me. And until we had that conversation and I tell her, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's going on with me. And a lot of times it's not even about you, or it's her, it's not even about me, but it's like something's coming up, but we take it in as maybe it's our problem. There's something wrong with me. And then when we can feel threatened that our ego is being challenged, or we might feel that, an old insecurity might be coming up of not feeling good enough, which is a very common one for a lot of people. Then people can get very defensive. And then try to stand their point, like, oh, I'm not the issue, you're the issue. Rather than, okay, what's coming up within me? And that's what we like, is we realize that every experience that we create is just our own manifestation, and that we create that. So if I want to change that, what could I change within me? How can I change the way I respond? How can I change the way that I feel? And also understanding why this is showing up for me in the first place. And part of that, again, is because of past experiences. And
it's like a mirror reflection of what's going on the inside. And it could be like a vibration of something from the past that got re-triggered, and then you're seeing it. So when you see an issue, it's a good thing, because now oh, there's something within me that still has an issue with this. Even though you might have worked on certain things, there's like a big aspect to that one issue. So it's like you could have worked on one side of it, but there's many different sides to the issue that could still be there. So it's really interesting when stuff comes up. Look at it as a good thing. And every time you work through an issue, you grow. So it can make your relationship stronger. You grow as a person, and it just makes us feel better every time, we address it.
And here's what, if you suppress it and you don't deal with it, a lot of people will just, oh, it'll work itself out and we won't talk about it, and it'll go away. And it'll go away, and then everything seems fine for a while. But what happens is it's still there. And then something else will re-trigger the issue again. And that's what, repeated issues in relationships. It's like, deal with what the true issue is. And if you have a hard time with that, this is where Veronica and I really come in to help our clients, is understand, like, what is it with them that's showing up? What's being triggered? How is that other person triggering you? What are they representing in your life that you still need to heal? And we had a lady that came to us a few years ago that was having challenges in her marriage. And it almost seemed like maybe the husband was part of the issue, but what was showing up for her was there had been some issues that had happened to her in the past with her parents, or maybe a lot of father issues, and that was highly emotional for her, and that becomes now ingrained into her nervous system. And so now it starts to show up as patterns in her life. And her husband, not doing anything intentionally, was being the trigger, almost like representing the father figure, and maybe things that he said or did, and what was going on. Like, all her emotion was getting triggered, and he wasn't aware of any of that. He didn't know. He didn't know what he was doing was affecting her. He's like, I just do this, and most people think, what's wrong with you? This is no big deal. But that person makes it a big deal because you don't know what experiences that they've gone through. And so by helping her to finally heal from the past issues, and let all the emotion that she repressed and get it out, she comes to us about, hey, my relationship with my husband is so much better. I don't get triggered by the things that he does anymore because she finally dealt with it. But when we suppress and repress, suppression is just not dealing with it. Repression is more when you completely forget about the situation and you go about your life until something triggers it again, and you completely forget the correlation between the two scenarios.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn how to heal ourselves within of all different experiences. We've had a lot. And when we can do that, we bring more happiness into our life.
And also, like when you think about like little things, you know, sometimes people like to joke around and say someone jokes around to their significant other, but then they take it in a maybe like in a negative way, like it really affects them, and then they're like, what, like, why is that affecting them? Like I was just joking around about something. But if you go back to their history, maybe they got bullied a lot or teased a lot. So one little joke, and if it's towards them, it could bring up that same feeling of being bullied or being teased.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to be mindful with what we say to other people, because you never know what they experience. You never know what they went through. And, you know, by joking around and you know, in a way like that, it can really bring something up for them. So it's, you know, it's just being mindful and knowing who you're talking to as well. Because if you know that someone's been bullied and teased a lot as a child, maybe they don't like to be, you know, be like the center of a joke or something. And also I think that can be maybe uncomfortable for a lot of people as well. Not necessarily just because they've been bullied, but some people feel uncomfortable when the joke's on them, you know, when it's like being pointed in their direction.
And you pointed this out because this has been our own experiences. Is, you know, I grew up in the family. It's the habit. Again, we pick up the patterns and habits of our family and how they do things. Also our peers and friends. And so joking and pointing fingers and teasing was a norm. Everybody did it. And so it's like, everybody's okay with that because that's the environment we grew up in. Then you grew up in a different environment.
Well, actually it was similar because there was a lot of teasing and joking around in our family, but I didn't like it. Yeah. Because my dad would tease me, and then I'd go to school and I'd get teased by the kids at school. So I felt like, wow, like I don't get a break. Like I'm always being teased. And so that's why I never really liked that. And I didn't like to tease other people, but I didn't like them teasing me as well.
Yeah. And someone can say, oh, you're just being too sensitive.
Yeah.
You might not think it's a very big deal, but to that other person it is. And you had brought that to my attention on a few things where I didn't know how some things that I said would affect you in the past. And once you expressed that, I was like, wow, I didn't know that. Now I could have let my ego get in the way and say like, oh, you're just being too sensitive. You got to just get over it. And how many people would do that? But the way I wanted to approach it was I didn't want her to make her feel that way. And I didn't know that I was making her feel that way. And that made me feel bad. And so I made it a point that I needed to change the way I talked. I needed to change the habit. And that took time to be very mindful of that. Can it slip up once in a while? Yes. And then she'll like remind me and like, oh, I'm sorry. And I wasn't aware. And again, sometimes we can get to those points, especially in those highly emotional states, is sometimes we feel like we want to vent something.
Yeah.
And some people can do it in a very, very harsh way. Even if you don't know, just something minor can really affect somebody. So I made it a point that I wanted to make sure that she felt comfortable and felt safe. So in our relationship, we make sure that we discuss and we're open. And that way she can feel safe talking to me and I can feel safe talking to her.
Yeah.
Now in your relationship, you may not feel safety. And this is where I think also a lot of challenges happen is there's something that's being suppressed you're not expressing because maybe you don't feel safe talking to that other person because maybe they have a habit or past experience show they're going to yell and they're going to just point and put the blame all back on me again. And so what do? We withdraw.
Yeah.
We don't feel safe expressing our emotions. And this is why I think a lot of people don't express emotions. It's because they don't feel safe and they have to feel comfortable with the person to be able to express it. You don't want to express to everybody, but feel comfortable expressing to people that you feel safe around.
Yeah, because if you don't feel like you can trust them with what you're going to tell them, then you're gonna withdraw and you're gonna not say anything. But so yeah, it's important to be able to communicate. But then if you're with a partner and you don't feel safe communicating, then there is a communication issue that can become a big problem because of it. And maybe they're not comfortable communicating issues or problems, but it's still talking about that, like, approach it in a way like, hey, like, do you feel comfortable communicating with me or talking to me about your problems or issues that come up? And then just kind of slowly have that conversation when it's not highly emotional. So it's easier to talk when there's not like a trigger that just happened and you're highly emotional. It's better to talk about those things when you're not in that highly emotional state, and then approach it in that way. So then when an issue does come up, then you can say, is it okay if we talk on this day at this time? And when both parties are calm.
Yeah, and I've really appreciated that with Veronica, because she's always given me that space of we'll when there's always an issue, we'll talk about it. And we find that the longer we let it out, we've learned that, one, things don't go very well. Like because it translates into everything. What you're feeling will translate not just in your relationships, it'll translate into your kids. It'll translate into your work environment. It'll affect your income. It'll affect your health. And so we understand, like, we want to deal with this early because of the ripple effect it's going to create. And if we don't deal with it, it's going to create a lot of damage. So we realize, let's deal with this early. It might be uncomfortable, but the earlier you deal with it, it's like you're going to have less uncomfortability, because if you hold on to it, you're having more days and more time that you're going to feel uncomfortable rather than dealing with the issue right away. And have you guys ever had that experience when you finally talked about something, like, I finally got that off my chest. Why did I go through this sooner?
Yeah, it's just creating your own suffering when you don't deal with the issues. You create this suffering and uncomfortability on the inside, and then not just for you, but for the other person as well. So that's why it's important to address it.
Yeah, I want to say hello to a few people that are joining in with us right now. We have Tiffany Cook, who's saying, morning, guys. Morning, Tiffany. Thank you guys for joining the show. If you're tuning in now, whether you're watching live here on Facebook or you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment here into the feed. Let us know where you're coming from. Let us know you're here, whether you're watching live or you're watching the replay.
And we also have Tavi and Jackie, and we have Chris and Garosa tuning in. Thank you guys for joining us.
So if you guys are just tuning in, you're watching Awaken Your Spirit. We are your hosts. I'm Dr. Aaron Garcia.
And I'm Veronica Mendez Garcia. And today we're talking about addressing problems early, or addressing issues so they don't turn into a big problem later.
Yeah, because it always starts as an issue.
Yeah.
And then when everything gets bottled up, then it becomes a problem. And then when you let the problem develop too much, then we reap the ramifications of that. And when we're talking about relationships, that could eventually lead into a damaged relationship. It could lead to a breakup. It could lead to a divorce. And or just this relationship can also be with your children or your family members, and what that relates to. And we've come across a lot of people that have issues with their parents, like they don't speak to their family, because they never dealt with the issue. They wanted to hold on to all the anger. They wanted to hold on to resentment and pretty much shut off their family. And we find that that's not really a pleasant way for them to live. And they're not happy about it, because when they think about it, it brings up all those emotions. And it's like when they are able to, go through like a forgiveness process, when you forgive somebody in your life for doing something, what you perceive something wrong to you, it's helping you, because you start to feel better. And when you hold on to all of that stress, you hold on to all that negative emotion, that'll start to turn to dis-ease in your body. It'll show up as physical pain. I've seen it show up as chronic disease and some deadly diseases that people deal with because they don't express. Yeah,
there could be different things. Like the body is interesting, how when we hold on to stuff, how it will manifest. Sometimes it'll appear as growths in our body, masses of just stuff that's stuck in there. Sometimes extra weight on the body. And sometimes when people deal with things and they address it and finally release it, they start to drop some weight. So it's very important to address those issues. And we've had, people, that have come to us for different things. And it's like the moment they release something, it's like their pain went away. They started dropping weight. Their relationships got better. So it's really important to address these things and not hold on to them. And if it's something that happened 5-10 years ago, like, why do we still hold on to it? It doesn't make us feel good. We just create our own suffering by doing that.
Yeah.
And maybe the person doesn't even know, like, and you're still holding on to that resentment or the anger, and they completely forgot about it. And then it's like, wow, like, I didn't know that they were still angry of something that happened 10 years ago. So
the old grudge.
Yeah. And then, they run into each other, and then they see like that they're still mad. And then it's like, what happened? And it's like, oh, remember that thing that you did to me 10 years ago? It's like, what? Like, I forgot about that. I don't even remember that happening. And like, one person can move on and another person can still hold on to it. But they create their own misery, their own suffering. So it's like, do you really want to live that way? Or do you want to be like free and letting go of all that?
Yeah, and it leads to all kinds of issues in your behavior. And what happens is when you hold on to that energy, you start to attract more experiences like that into your world. And you've ever asked yourself this question: why does this keep happening to me? Like, we're talking about relationships. Why does I keep attracting these types of people into my life? Or how come I can't attract this certain person into my life? Well, because you're still holding on to stuff that's projecting an energy, and by law of attraction, you're getting that like energy back to you.
Or you'll notice it with other people too, like that same whatever energy you're putting out, you'll start to see more of it out there.
Yeah, and so when you've learned to finally deal with the issues that you've been holding on to, maybe it's holding on to old hurts, maybe it's anger. From something that ever happened, especially in relationships. We've gone through different relationships in our life until we find the right one. But we go through heartbreaks, we go through hurts, and there's a lot of people that we don't like feeling hurt. It's not a great emotion, but we sometimes will go through it. But a lot of people, it's so painful that they do anything to avoid it, and that can actually create sabotaging behaviors in relationships, where we've had people that have in their belief system. They believe that in their relationship that when they first start going into the relationship, all this relationship is going to work out anyways, or they're already preparing ahead of time in their mind that the relationship's going to end.
Yeah.
And what happens is they create scenarios to end the relationship. That way they don't ever have to go through that hurt, like the escape. And what happens, then they wonder, like, why can't I ever find the right person? Because you end up attracting that person that probably isn't going to be the right person for you, because you don't want to go through that hurt again. And it happens in so many different ways, but that's just one scenario.
Yeah. And I know for me, I think I used to kind of do that years ago. I would end the relationship before it started to get too serious. So I think it was like at the 2-year mark or a year and a half or so. It was like, but then for me, it was more like analyzing it. Like, where is this going? Is it going anywhere, or is it just like too much? And sometimes I would, end the relationship before it got, too serious, or before it was like spending more time with someone who I don't feel maybe connected anymore, or just unhappy in the relationship. Like, why continue if you're unhappy? So, I probably did that when I was younger, but I think also for me, it was like, I would let go of the relationship, but I wouldn't really hang on to the grudge. And if they were to call me again, I could talk to them like normal, but I wouldn't really hang on to that anger or whatever was there. And some people would tell me, like, why are you talking to them? Like, after they did this and this to you? I'm like, I'm not holding on to that anger. So it doesn't bother me. But sometimes people, feel that way, like, oh, because they did this to me, I'm going to hold that grudge against them, or I'm going to have anger towards them. But that's the holding on.
And I think one of the worst things that anybody can do in a relationship is when there's an issue, and let's say that issue becomes an argument, is going back and forth like a battle, and somebody's trying to win. And trying to like, no, you're the issue. No, you're the issue. And it gets to the point where somebody has to submit, and eventually it goes away. But then what's the aftermath of that? What's now been ingrained? And again, this is why some people might avoid conflict, because they don't want to go through that argument. Like, again, maybe they've had experiences of of parents or people fighting in their environment, and they don't want to go through that, so they avoid conflict as much as possible.
Yeah.
But what happens when you have those conflicts and you're not discussing, you're just fighting, it's kind of that's really just expressing emotion, and nothing gets really
It gets
solved.
nowhere. Yeah.
Gets nowhere. And again, that creates more problems in the future, rather than trying to understand the other person and having a rational conversation. But that's why you got to get past the emotion first before you have that conversation, because sometimes the emotion can take over, and that's when more challenges happen.
Yeah. And we have one of our viewers that had tuned in before and mentioned, I think it was when he was married, that his wife cheated on him. And she was probably expecting for him to react like out of anger or whatever. And then he told her, "I forgive you." And that's very powerful to be able to say that and to truly feel it as well, because it's like she was probably expecting a complete different reaction, and maybe held on, for a while to not say it until she finally, had to talk about it. And then for him to say that, I think that's very, very powerful, to come in that way. And it's like seeing her as a person, and maybe seeing like, maybe the reason why, or whatever she went through, maybe her history as well. But that takes a lot of courage and stuff to be able to do that, and to feel like the compassion for the other person as well.
Yeah. And so I learned when there's any kind of issues going on, the first thing I always want to look at, again, what am I attracting? What energy am I putting out that could be creating the situation? If I understand that everything that we experience in our life is a sum total of the thoughts that we think, the emotions that we hold on to, and the behaviors and actions that we take, and eventually it's going to lead to a result. And so it's like, hey, what's showing up within me that's kind of now in the frame of my vision, and what's the mirror reflection that's showing in the situation. And I looked at, wow, this is a great opportunity for me to heal something I have not dealt with yet in my life, and it's showing up again. And we understand this so much now that, hey, like, I'll let her know, like, hey, I'm dealing with something. Can we talk about this? And I might not feel comfortable talking in that moment, because again, the emotional state. So I process a lot of stuff in my own mind until I can't do it anymore, and like, hey, let's talk. And then it's like we have that discussion, and when you change your perspective, you change your viewpoints on things. Again, I don't know what goes on in your mind. Sometimes you know what goes on in my mind, but until we really know, we have to ask the question, hey, how I feel this way. Is this what's going on? And you might find a lot of the times, no, I was never thinking that. It's like you made that up in your own mind. You'll say that it's like, but we create these scenarios, this own drama in our mind. And that's what starts to create the emotion on the inside, because we believe something bad is going to happen. And again, that's all based from past experiences. Oh, this might happen again. And it's triggering up all these emotions. And why it's getting triggered, because those emotions have never been processed properly. They're trapped and ingrained within your nervous system, and it's all just keeps resurfacing. Something's bringing it back up again. And when you learn to let it go and heal from that, and this is where we work with our clients, is we help people let things go that they hold on to. You don't get triggered by that in the past, and you can make a different experience for yourself.
Yeah, and it's so freeing to be able to let go of all that's you're holding on to, because if it's still a trigger, that means there's something there, an experience you had that's bringing up your stuff. And it's so much better to be free and to feel that freedom of talking about it, of letting it go, letting go of even the past, like whatever relationships you were in before. And if you just thinking about it, if it still brings up like anger or hurt feelings, then that means you still haven't fully let that go. But the moment you allow yourself to process that, it feels so much better, because you're just letting go. It's no longer in your nervous system. It's no longer in your vibration. So think about that. If if you've had past experiences that weren't pleasant in relationships, and this could be personal or even business. If you think about those scenarios and what happened, and you still feel that uncomfortable feeling when you think about it, you're still carrying that emotion or that vibration within you. So then you're going to tend to attract other people that are similar, or other situations that make you feel the way it did, years ago. So it's like, why do we want to attract that again?
Mm-hmm.
So it's best for us to let that go and really think about and feel what we really want to attract. Focus on what we want to attract, and not focusing on the past of what happened.
Yeah. And if you find that you're in that unsafe place because there are scenarios where people, like, they've attracted that wrong person into their life. And we've seen these people. And again, never dealing with the issue and hanging on too long. And what will happen is you look at their patterns in the past. Oh, it's just like this person, it's just like this person, because there's something with them on the inside that needs to be healed. And that person that's in their life right now is an exact vibrational match to them from a thinking, feeling perspective. Even if they seem completely opposite, somewhere deep inside, they are the exact match vibrationally. And that's why they were brought together.
Yeah, and the match could also be like people who are maybe they feel insecure about themselves. They're going to tend to attract, it could be either another person who's insecure, or another person who makes them feel insecure. So it could be someone that maybe puts them down, and then now they feel even more insecure. So it could be either way. So it could be a someone similar, or someone who makes you feel that way.
This is why it's important to identify and realize that when there's issues in a relationship, and we're not saying that person has the issue, we always have to at least be honest with ourselves and say, wow, there's an issue within me that's a part of this co-creation. We each create our own experience, which means I create my experience, but Veronica's also part of that creation too. And we've come to understand we want to co-create together in the best way that we can. So we partner with that, and we have to communicate. In your relationship, communication is so key, because what brings up a lot of conflict and anger and frustration is all because of misunderstanding, because nothing ever got talked about. We were led to perceive things in a certain way, and we make it up, and that creates resentment, that creates all kinds of emotions, and eventually that can destroy a relationship.
So it's have that awareness of how you're feeling, even the thoughts that go in your mind about the other person, and if are they good thoughts, are they negative thoughts, and what you're telling yourself about that person, what you're telling yourself about yourself. And if you're feeling not good enough on the inside, maybe that's the vibration you're projecting, which in turn the other person can possibly make you feel that way. But they can't make you feel that way because we choose to, but it's perceived as like, they made me feel this way, or they did this and made me feel this way. So it's really important to have that awareness of how we're feeling, how we're thinking. And best thing is communication.
Yeah. And one of the biggest questions that we can always ask ourselves is, why do I feel this way? And when you ask that question, you'll get an answer. And if you're not sure, keep asking the question. It's like, why do I feel this way? Oh, well, or what am I feeling? First, understand what you're feeling at the beginning. Well, if I feel hurt. Okay. Why do I feel hurt? I feel hurt because I feel they don't understand me, as an example. And you keep asking the question, and you'll get a deeper and deeper answer. And why, if they don't understand me, why does that bother me so much? And usually it'll come down to some component of, well, it makes me feel like I'm not good enough. It makes me feel unloved. It makes me feel like I'm alone. All these different scenarios. And that's what really the core issue is. That'll bring up and trigger all the emotions. Everything else is just the symptom that's triggering the deeper issues that are going on within us. And then when we can identify, well, when did that happen? When did I feel like I wasn't good enough? What made me believe that? And you can start going back to different scenarios in your life, and you get to go back as far as you can think rationally or consciously, and something will show up. There will probably be some type of significant event in your life that started to ingrain that belief system. Maybe it's been your whole life. Maybe you grew up in an environment that they were always putting you down and criticizing you. We talked about teasing and poking fun at, and how does that make a child feel? And then that becomes their programming. That becomes a program that says, I am not good enough. and they relive experiences after experience that says, yes, that experience, this result in my life is proving to me that I'm not good enough. But the truth of the matter is, you are more than enough. It's just we have a faulty belief system based on what other people put into our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when we learn to change our belief, we learn to change the way that we think that necessarily is not true, then we create a whole new experience in our life.
Yeah. So it's really, being aware of like, what do you tell yourself? And then also how people treat you. And if people treat you bad all the time, what's going on within you that's attracting that to you?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like that. Let's just have more awareness of that and understand that we all have something within us that's attracting what comes to us. That is, it's attracting our circumstances that are around us. So just be mindful, be aware.
And when issues start to show up in your relationships, like we talked about here, it's best to start to deal with them early. Mm-hmm. Because you don't want to bottle all of that up and sweep it under the rug, because eventually someone's going to bring that dirt right back up again. Yeah. And it's going to translate into so many different areas. And so if you don't feel safe, make sure you, one, calm your emotions down as much as you can. Take a breath, go do something that's going to help you kind of get your mind to calm, because then you can start to think of solutions. What's the best way for me to go about this situation? Do I need extra guidance? Do I just need to have a conversation and talk? Hey, can we talk at this time? And really discuss what the issue is. And a lot of the times you'll find out that it's not everything you thought it would be. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, oh. And then it's like the thought comes like, why did I even hold on to that? I was creating all this turmoil and agony in my own mind. And if I just had that conversation like the day that it happened, I wouldn't have to have gone through this. And I'm talking about this from personal experience. I learned that why I am just hanging on to it. Like, why am I hanging on to it?
So do you want to keep feeling that way? How much longer?
No. But because when you hang on to it, it's like you don't feel good.
You don't.
And so we learn to release that. You have to feel safe with expressing how you're feeling with other people, especially mm-hmm. if it's your spouse, significant other, is make sure that they're in a good space, that you're in a good space. If they're in a highly emotional state, wait till they calm down to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. But maybe set a time. Hey, can we talk about this at this point? Let's all calm down and we'll discuss it.
Yeah.
And sometimes those conversations can be really hard to have. I get it.
Because it's uncomfortable. Because if it's an issue and it's almost like because it's an issue, so you kind of get that uneasiness. But just understand that if you're feeling that, it's a good thing, because by talking about it, it's going to push you forward into something stronger, something better. So it's peeling back the layers maybe of the relationship or of yourself that you're still holding on to, that's showing up in your relationship. So understand that you're going to become a stronger person. You're not going to be the same person you were prior to talking about the issues. Mm-hmm. And this goes with everything. Yeah.
And if you wait too long, then that issue now becomes a problem. And that problem can escalate into so many different things that eventually it could be too late, where you could have dealt with that issue early on. And that's mm-hmm. what's important, to have open communication and trust in your relationships, and realize that sometimes it's stuff that's going on within us that's showing up that needs to be dealt with. And if you're having a hard time with that in your life, maybe there's something going on and you don't know how to go through it, you're feeling all this emotion, reach out to us, because we can help you process a lot of what's going on. Maybe heal some things in the past so you can create a different experience in the future for yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes in relationships, when you're talking about an issue, because you're feeling a certain way, it's also understanding how to approach the situation. So instead of saying to the other person, like, you did this and you made me feel this way, it's addressing it like, I'm not saying that you did anything, but this is how I'm feeling. Like, address it in the way that you're feeling, not you made me feel this way, because it's like they can't make you feel anything. You choose to feel a certain way based on your experience and what mm-hmm. maybe something that happened in the past. So it's like I'm not blaming you for anything, but I just want to let you know this is how I feel.
Yeah. And especially if somebody else is going through their own mm-hmm. insecurity and self-worth issues, and you're saying you're the problem, then it's now they're having their own issue that's going to show up, and people can get defensive. Yeah. And I'm not gonna allow someone to attack me, so they attack back. That's the
Mhm.
strategy, and it goes back and forth until somebody wins. Someone's gonna tire out, and again, maybe there is an end to that conversation, but eventually somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose in that scenario, and that doesn't work very well in relationships. So it's like when we can have compromise and, hey, let's talk about this. And I like how you said, is I'm feeling this way, and you can say, is that true? Not you're making me feel this way, but this is the way I feel. It's like, wow. And I can sometimes, and when we talk about this, is
Mhm.
wow, I didn't know you felt that way about this.
So
And
it kind of changes the whole, situation. It's like, oh, I didn't even know it was that. I thought it was this, because we create the own story, our own stories in our
yeah,
minds. So
I can say, oh, what did I do wrong? It has nothing to do with me. I feel like it's projecting on me, or she might feel I'm projecting on her, but
Mhm.
a lot of times that has nothing to do with that other person. They're just a person that's in front of us that's, getting the expression of what we're feeling.
Yeah.
But really, it's our internal stuff that's showing up. Just like that concept, someone has a bad day at work and they go home, and all the emotion that they're holding on to, they're
Mhm.
going to project and express that onto whoever's in their vicinity. They project their anger onto their kids, onto their spouse. And again, now that creates issues in the relationship.
Yeah.
So you got to understand, where's the real issue, and let's talk about it. Let's rationalize. And when you're in a really calm, rational state, you can come up with better solutions. And yes, it might be uncomfortable in the beginning, but you'll realize that, wow, it's easier to get in that conversation, but you have to practice that.
Yeah, and especially during challenging times, or times where people, perceive it as stressful, and with everything going on, like, people can feel maybe more pressure. And so it's important to have that communication with your spouse, your significant other, if you're feeling like a little overwhelmed with what's happening, and not project it on the other person, but maybe have that conversation, like, everything that's going on, I do feel a little stressed right now, and I don't want to project that on you. I just want to let you know that this is what I'm going through. Because sometimes when people go through stress, they don't say anything, and they just internalize it, and then something happens and they lash out at their loved ones. So that's why it's important to have that open communication and say, I'm really feeling under stress right now, and if you need help with something, ask for the help, because they might have no idea that you're going through that internally until you blow up, or until something happens. So why wait until that issue becomes a problem, and now two people aren't feeling good? So it's address it, like, when you start to feel it, but have that awareness, and have the awareness of how you're feeling. And it's either you feel good or you don't, and understand that. And if you're not feeling good, have that communication when you're emotionally calm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope this has been very insightful and helpful for you guys here today. If you like this episode, make sure you give us some hearts, some likes, and make sure to comment on how this has been helping you. And whether you're watching live on Facebook or you're also watching on YouTube, remember, we are live here every Monday and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel if you're watching on YouTube and get the notifications. If you're on Facebook, get the live notifications here, and follow us at Aaron and Veronica. And yes, I'm seeing where the buttons are going. And so let us know if it's been helping you. If you know that there's anybody that can benefit from this message today, please share the show, because as we always say, we never know who this message is going to impact. All right, guys. Join us here next time, and we will see you guys, and have an amazing day.